All right, everyone. Mark Rogers TV back for the fifth round analysis of the NFL draft concluding on Saturday. We're again running down those players that we saw extensively in college. Again, probably 85% of these players taken off of BCS conference rosters. So we saw all these guys play from the BCS conferences and Notre Dame in particular, the Mountain West to a lesser degree. We're talking about those guys that we saw extensively. And we go to the fifth round. Jacksonville's pick at 144 is Telvin Smith, inside linebacker from Florida State. This guy is very athletic. He's very comfortable in coverage. Will go out there, play the tight ends and the running backs with no problem, and some wide receivers in coverage. He's a willing tackler. He's a willing run supporter guy in the run game. It's not that he shies away from it, but he doesn't shed blocks that well. He's not an extremely physical player, not extremely strong. Willing, yes, but he needs to get stronger in the pro game to meet some of those running backs in the hole and take them on and win those physical battles. And when those offensive linemen get to the second level, he needs to be able to shed those blocks. But again, very athletic guy. Not extremely fast, what you might think of a Florida State linebacker, but very, very athletic, and again, comfortable in coverage, had 9.5 sacks and 9.5 tackles for loss, and played all 4 years at Florida State, although he was technically just a starter this season in 2013 when the Noles won the national championship. We go down to pick number 147, the Atlanta Falcons taking Ricardo Allen, the cornerback from Purdue. So we go from 14-0 Florida State all the way down to 1-11 Purdue. The Boilers turning in basically their worst season in school history. Ricardo Allen stepped on campus and started immediately, and he started all over the place. He was effective in the return game, in special teams, intercepted passes almost from game one, was a major factor in run support, had 73 total tackles from the corner position as a freshman. And this is a guy that played for a football team that was much better 3 or 4 years ago than they are now. He's been among the leading tacklers on his team for all 4 years at Purdue, finished with 13 career interceptions, second in school history, and had 6 of those this past season as a senior at Purdue. We really like Ricardo Allen for the Atlanta Falcons corner at pick number 147. We drop it down to the Miami Dolphins selection of Arthur Lynch at tight end for Georgia. Here's a guy that was mainly a blocker for Georgia his first 2 seasons. Saw the field a lot, didn't catch any passes, basically no passes, like 2 passes his first 2 seasons at Georgia. So we're not talking a prolific Jimmy Graham and now Eric Ebron type of tight end. We're talking about a guy that's definitely going to be an inline blocker. He's going to play just outside the tackle position, and he's going to provide blocking. That said, he's still going to have to mature and bulk up and get stronger to take on NFL defensive ends. But he's a very willing blocker. He's very accustomed to it, got used to it at Georgia because that's what he generally did, especially those first 2 years, playing almost every game and blocking and catching basically, again, no passes. Came on with 24 receptions as a junior, 30 this past season with 5 touchdowns. Unfortunately for Arthur Lynch in Georgia, he finished off his career by dropping a pass against Nebraska in the Gator Bowl that would have set up Georgia inside the 10-yard line to possibly win that game against the Huskers. That was a 4th down would-be conversion that ended the football game, in the Georgia Bulldogs loss to Nebraska in the Gator. We stay in the SEC. The next pick goes to the Denver Broncos at 156, and Layman Barrow, outside linebacker from LSU. The last 2 seasons, after playing consistently but in a backup role his first 2 seasons at Baton Rouge, 104 and 91 total tackles the last 2 years to lead the team. This guy was a captain who wore number 18 at LSU. That's very significant there. Tough, smart football player, understands the scheme, helps get his teammates in the right position, very athletic. Again, much like Telvin Smith, not elite speed, what you would expect out of an LSU linebacker. Fast enough, but not elite speed. Very athletic, though, and very, again, maybe not to the degree of Telvin Smith, but comfortable in coverage, and again, a very, very tough and smart football player. Layman Barrow to the Broncos at 156. We drop it down and we stay in the SEC. The SEC, of course, with more players, 49 drafted than any league in the country. Again, Jacksonville at 159 takes Chris Smith out of Arkansas, the defensive end, who teamed up with Trey Flowers to arguably combine as the best D ends in the conference. 18 sacks the past 2 seasons for Chris Smith. He's not a very physical player, though. He likes space. He likes to stay off that tackle, and he wants to be able to beat him in space and make his move. He wants to track down the ball carrier, not necessarily take on very physical ball carriers head on. He's a guy that uses his speed and quickness and his technique, which he has refined over the past couple seasons, to his advantage over being a physical player. Chris Smith to Jacksonville as the Jags, on paper, had a really good draft here in 2014. We stay in the SEC. Tons of SEC players to talk about here, and the 2 guys that most people want to hear about, Kansas City taking Aaron Murray at pick 163, and then right after that, Cincinnati goes with A.J. McCarron. These guys have been linked throughout their careers in the SEC, and now being drafted that close together will be compared throughout their NFL careers. First, we go with the Chiefs and Murray, a guy who started as a freshman, started 4 years, and in regards to sheer statistics, the most prolific passer in the history of that storied conference. 24 touchdowns, 8 picks his freshman year. Then 35 and 14 as a sophomore. 36 and 10 as a junior. Then this past season, 26 touchdowns, 9 picks. Of course, he suffered the ACL injury against Kentucky with about 3 games to go in the season. Missed the bowl game, missed the Georgia Tech game as well with the knee issue, and did not participate in the combine in Indianapolis. He's a leader. He's not a real vocal guy, not going to pump up his teammates verbally, not going to shout at them and put them down on the field either. He leads by example. He's a strong leader. He leads by the example of his play here and by his football acumen. An extremely smart quarterback, makes the right reads, has a quick release, gets the football to the right guy, does not have an exceptional arm. His arm's good enough. He's got quick feet in that he bounces, he uses his feet well in the pocket, but he's not fast, he's not quick in space in terms of eluding rushers or getting outside the pocket and burning a defense with his feet. But again, he uses his feet to his advantage to set up his mechanics and release the football with that rapid-fire release. Would have loved to have seen this guy play in a national championship game. Nothing against the Tide, but to see a prolific career and a classy player like Aaron Murray get to the 5-yard line, a few seconds left, could have had one more play, but that's the way it goes. Did not win that 2012 SEC championship game, and that almost, in a sense, defines his career at Georgia. I was a bit surprised by his win-loss record, but I went through it, and it certainly adds up. 35 wins, 17 losses. I would have thought Aaron Murray at Georgia had a more dominating win percentage, but he had a couple down years, or the team did, most notably a couple years ago at 6-7, the year before the SEC championship game appearance. Actually, that was back in 2010, his freshman year. 6-7, losing to Central Florida in the Liberty Bowl. All right, let's get to A.J. McCarron. Let's match up his statistics in terms of his touchdown-to-pick ratios. 16-5, then 30-3 when they won the national championship in 2012, then 28-7 this past season. Murray's got the stats. A.J. McCarron, of course, the titles. 2 championships at Alabama, 1 SEC championship, so keep in mind they didn't win the SEC in 2011, got the rematch with LSU in New Orleans. He played almost a flawless game, had the defense to rely on in pitching the shutout, and of course, not too bad when you can look at Eddie Lacy and also at that point, it was Eddie Lacy, and then the season after, T.J. Yeldon and Eddie Lacy as well in the 2012 championship run when they squashed Notre Dame. 36-4 record for A.J. McCarron. He's a skinny kid. Looks a lot like Tom Brady did when he came out of Michigan, and you see some of the documentaries on Tom Brady and what a scrawny kid he was coming out of Michigan, even a big-time football program where he really needed to add the bulk just for the endurance and to be able to protect himself in the pocket against the onslaught of those big bodies in the NFL, and also to deliver the football. Brady's arm's gotten stronger. Maybe McCarron with some work and with some work on his technique, although there's nothing critically wrong with his technique or his throwing motion. If he tightens it up a little bit more and hits the weights, maybe like Brady, he can improve on the velocity as well. A.J. McCarron goes to Cincinnati at pick 164. These guys were slotted at 163 and 164 based on their limitations as athletes and arm strength. I think it's very fair where they were selected. They're both dynamic leaders who know the game and know where to get the football on time. All right, Vinny Sunseri, safety, who didn't complete his last season at Alabama because of an injury, the third game of the season, had a pick 6 in the opener against Virginia Tech. Sunseri goes to New Orleans at 167. Also wanted to highlight a couple guys at the end of this 5th round. In John Urschel going to Baltimore at pick 175. Urschel, the guard out of Penn State. And all you need to know about this guy is that he delivered the keynote speech at the Big Ten football luncheon 2 years ago. He's a very, very intelligent kid and very, very intelligent to the point that he was teaching classes at Penn State, classes that I would not be able to pronounce in mathematics. Amazing kid, obviously a strong, strong football player as well, and a smart football player. Whether he'll succeed, we will see. Marginal talent, very high acumen and IQ, even in football, and he goes to the Ravens at 175. Last pick of the 5th round, a selection that I really like. Green Bay takes Jared Abbrederis, the wide receiver out of Wisconsin, who never had a number 2 guy to play off of him. Never had that number 2 receiver that could take pressure off Abbrederis. He was always the number 1 threat since his sophomore season. Since going to the Rose Bowl with Russell Wilson, almost upsetting Oregon. They had that final drive. They got it down to like the 28-yard line. Didn't have time to complete the drive. Abbrederis had a key drop in that game. He has very, very steady, dependable hands, but had a key drop, which actually was a fumble. He caught the football, then fumbled it on the second to last drive of that game as Wisconsin lost a tough one to Oregon. But let's look big picture here. Excellent hands, polished receiver. Everybody saw what he did to Bradley Roby, a first-round pick to the Denver Broncos when the Buckeyes took on the Badgers in Columbus this past year, and Abbrederis caught passes for over 200 yards and repeatedly burnt Roby on the double move in that game. Caught 78 for over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns as a senior after 50 receptions and 5 touchdowns as a junior. Again, he's polished. He's going to have to get stronger. He's got good speed, not great speed. I expect him to do well in the NFL, and he's got Aaron Rodgers throwing him the football, and a receiver core that's lost James Jones, Greg Jennings, going to need him to develop and possibly play a role this season and certainly down the road in the next couple years. Interesting 5th round. A lot of college stars that are marginal selections and prospects in the NFL at this point. We'll see if they turn out. Would love to hear from you. Need your comments and questions right here on Mark Rogers TV.